create a new game object with a line renderer component and a new script called Sine Wave. In your script, create and assign a reference to your line renderer component. Next, create an integer variable called points, which will dictate the number of points we want our line renderer to have. This will dictate the wave's resolution. Let's create a draw method that represents the function y equals sine x for a full cycle. First, we need to know the starting and finishing values in the x dimension. Since a sine wave is a visual representation of the y value in a circle with x being the current radian, in order to see a full cycle of y equals sine x, the x value will need to go from 0 to 2 times pi, or tau, since that's how many radians are needed to draw a full circle. Next, create as many positions in your line renderer as the variable points. And finally, loop through all of these points to calculate and assign their positions. To find each point, first we calculate x. We do this by finding the current point's progress in relation to the total number of positions as a value from 0 to 1. Next, we lerp between the starting and finishing values in this current progress. Lerp calculates the value between two floats at a given percentage, most likely by finding the difference between them and adding a percentage of this to the initial value. To get the y value, we simply calculate the sine of the current x value. This will give us a number between -1 and 1. In the case of values of x starting and finishing at 0 and tau, the first and last value will be 0. Once we calculate both values, we assign them at the corresponding place in our line renderer as a vector 3 with z value being 0. We can now run this method in our update function and see our sine get drawn every frame. If you want to shift your sine over time, simply add a time value to the x value before calculating its sine. If you want to control its amplitude, add an amplitude float value to your script and multiply your sine's calculation by this variable. If you want to specify its frequency, add a frequency float variable and then multiply this by tau and your current x value prior to calculating its sine. If you want to specify your wave's starting and ending points, create a vector2 variable for these limits and map their values to the x start and x finish floats. If you want to increase the speed at which it shifts, make a float variable called movement speed and multiply your time value by this. Setting this value to 0 will freeze your wave in position. If you want to move your sine wave around in the 2D space, you can simply uncheck line renderer's world space and use the transform position to move your sine wave around. You made it to the end, thank you. Don't forget that you can like and subscribe.